thought to yourself, I feel like I should have more money, or I feel like I should be farther along. Or maybe you're looking at your investment account balance and you're thinking, I feel like I've saved pretty diligently. I've worked hard and I've even gotten a good rate of return. I really thought I'd have more, right? I'd be farther along than where I'm at right now. Today, we're going to get into some real talk about exactly why that's happening. I'm your host, Erica Neal. I'm your infinite banking practitioner, a wealth strategist. And coming from the traditional financial planning space, I had that conversation with so many people. I thought I'd be farther along, or honestly, I don't think I've ever met anybody that has more money than what they thought. But again, we really want to make sure and debunk the myths and get into the reality, right? Real talk about money and what's actually happening inside of these investment accounts. So today's conversation, I'm going to get up on a soapbox for a little bit, so you guys bear with me a little bit. When I'm on this soapbox, I'm specifically referring to one of my pet peeves in the industry, which is the average rate of return. This is a very common calculation that is used across the board in the financial industry. It's quick and it's easy. But the problem is, it's not exactly accurate. So when you're looking at your account and you feel like there's a difference between what the performance and the average that you're seeing and what the actual account balance is, there's a reason why. So today we're going to get into the reality of what is actually affecting your bottom dollar. What's the difference between the average rate of return that's being advertised and the internal or the actual rate of return, along with other factors, to really understand why you may not have what you thought. And the goal here is we're going to give you confidence and clarity so that you can make better decisions and that you can just continue to build your wealth more efficiently. And that's what it's all about, right? So let's get into it. All right, so the first thing I'm going to use several tools today, so you guys just bear with me. I'm going to use the market history. So let's dive into that. There's a lot of them going on here. I want the S&P with dividends. So we're looking at the S&P with dividends. Now let's just look at 40 years, okay? I know some of us are younger, some of us are older, doesn't matter. We're just going to look at this timeline. So over the last 40 years, this is what this is saying. Over the last 40 years, this is what the S&P, if you invested in the S&P with dividends, this is the performance that you would have seen over that 40-year timeline. The average rate of return over that 40 years is 13.09. Not bad, right? Pretty good average return. So something I want to point out with this, though, is average rate of return. Again, it's talked about quite a bit, but do we really see, let's look here, year by year by year, that's not super indicative of the true return that's impacting your dollars or your account value every single year. So this is a big difference, and it's something that we need to communicate. And again, we need to understand, because that's what has the biggest impact on your dollars. Here's the thing about average rate of return. So here's an example I like to use. Let's say you have $100,000, and in year one in your investments, you get a 25% rate of return, right? We're all happy. You're high-fiving, starting year two with 125 grand. Great. Year two comes and goes, and in year two, you lose 25% that year. So over those 2 years, between year one and year two, earning 25, losing 25, your average rate of return is 0%, okay? 0%. So shouldn't that mean that your account balance is unaffected, right? If you've gotten a zero, right, your average net, basically you're back to square one, right? Does your account balance go to the original 100,000? No, it goes down to 93,750. So your average rate of return, even though it's zero, the actual return that you're seeing internally is closer to -7. That is the difference, my friends. And that is what we need to make sure and understand what's being advertised and what's really happening, right? Like when we drive down the highway and we see those billboards for fast food and we've got this pretty picture of what food they serve, you know good and well it's not going to look like that when you get it from the restaurant, right? Same concept. What's advertised is not always actually what you're going to get. So that's the difference here. Let's look at the impact on an investment account or some sort of retirement account. Okay, so what we're going to do is let's use these real returns, okay? We're going to use the real returns. Well, we'll go back to that. Let's look at, I want to go to a future value calculator. So I want to use this because this future value calculator is one of the, you probably use something like this if you visited like an investment website or retirement, something. They like to have this on here to kind of demonstrate if you were to get an average rate of return, what would your future account balance look like? So let's pretend that you're starting at zero and you're going to save, let's say $10,000 a year. Cool. And let's pretend that you're going to get that 13.09 that we just saw the S&P produce. If you did that over 40 years, so you started investing in 1985, and now you have received that average of 13.09 for the last 40 years, your future value, according to these calculators, should be $10,395,578.86. Okay? That's a lot of cheese. So what we need to look at is, all right, this is what's being, again, this is what a lot of people are seeing on their investment account, on their investment calculators and things like that. But let's look at the reality of the scenario. So let's minimize that. Again, let's come back here. I want to use these real numbers because did you get, if you invested in 1985, did you get 13.09 every single year? No. We've got 31.16, 18.59, 5.78. Some are higher, some are lower. There's actually a lot of high ones. There's even some that are negative. Now, let's go to an accumulation calculator. Okay, so again, we're going to illustrate 40 years, starting at 0. Let's look at, and this light is really bright, cash flow. We're going to put in $10,000 a year. And we're not going to do like any increases. We're just going to keep it stable across the board just to prove a point. Okay. So your earnings rate, instead of it being 0, right, we're going to put in, let's paste the values here. Okay. So the real numbers, when we put in the real rates of return, not just a consistent average, the total amount you would actually have in your account at the end of 40 years is 6.285. That's a lot of money. However, there's a lot of difference between this 10 million and this 6 million. That's a massive, massive spread. Now we see the difference between the average rate of return and, the impact of the real returns, but there's still a couple of other costs and nuances that we need to factor into these types of accounts. So the first thing is our internal costs. So most of these investment accounts, I'm just going to put an account management fee of 1%. I've seen more, I've seen less, whatever. 1% I feel like is a very reasonable rate. So if we factor in the internal costs, account management fees. Okay, so once we have factored in the account management fees, we have now gone from a 10.3 million to 6.2. We're down to 4.5. So we're at 4.5 million on this average rate of return of 13.09. Okay. There's one more thing that we need to make sure and factor in that affects everything the light touches. What is it? Taxes. Always taxes. Taxes. So let's go to taxes. I'm just going to do a federal income tax rate of 20%. If you do, I feel like that's pretty effective, right? Like pretty normal as an effective tax rate. I don't know whether or not you have a state income tax. So if you do, then you need to factor that in. I'm just going to leave it at a federal income rate. I'm also going to put these taxes on the earnings on an annual basis. We're not going to defer the taxes until later. And again, taxes are going to be paid now or later. So if you're looking at this through a retirement income space, that's fine. You'll pay taxes on the back end. I'm just going to look at it on a year-by-year basis because they're going to get paid regardless. So let's include the taxes. Show them here. Okay, so now that we have included both a 1% management fee and 20% in taxes, we've reduced the account value to 2.14, excuse me. Okay, now here's what I want to point something out. Without taxes, we're at 4.5. Okay, if we're including 20% in taxes, I just want to point this out. If we're including 20% for taxes, it doesn't just reduce the account value by 20%. In fact, when we put in 20% for taxes, that's more than a 50% cut because you're not able to continually allow your money to grow and compound. Okay. Now the argument would be, well, that's what I have my retirement account for. I'm just gonna let all of that growth defer and I'm gonna earn on it all along the way. There's an argument for that. I can see both sides. The problem with a retirement account is, if you're not gonna be pulling money out of your retirement account for 10 or 15 years, 20 years plus, and I'm gonna do a whole separate video on this. Are you gonna be making less money in 10, 15, 20 years? Are tax brackets gonna go down? And is your account balance gonna go down? Surely not, right? Like all of those things. So the problem with deferring taxes is you're setting yourself up at risk for having a larger tax bill later on down the line. So again, we could do it either way. I'm just using it on the ongoing basis for now. So 20% in taxes and management fees, we are down to $2.1 million. So again, this is a big difference than what our future value calculator told us at that $10 million number. Now, what we need to understand is, okay, there's a difference here, obviously between the average rate of return and what's happening internally. So we need to understand what's the difference. What is the actual internal return that you're able to see and realize on your bottom dollar on your account balance. So before we get into that, make sure if you have not already that you, number one, subscribe, but please make sure and like and share this video so we can spread the good word out to as many people as possible. So let's get into the real numbers here. We're going to take the account value. We're going to copy the account value. Let's use an internal rate of return calculator. Here it is. Okay, so on our internal rate of return, again, we're going to demonstrate 40 years. And it doesn't matter how old you are. You're going to do a $10,000. That's why. Here we go. Annual investment of $10,000. If your end account value, we're going to paste the values, what we just saw, like the real account balance after factoring in management fees, taxes, and the real rate of return. Let's paste the values that we actually got. And so what that's going to allow us to do is, here it is. So now what that's going to allow us to do is see the actual internal rate of return. So the net realization that you're going to have of your money is 7.01%. Okay? So again, when we looked at the original 13.09, that looked great and wonderful. But the reality of it is, and again, the whole premise of starting this conversation was, do you feel like you're farther behind than what you thought? Most people do, and this is why. We need to understand the difference between the actual and the average and what impact is it having on you and your money, and long term, what impact is it having on your family. So let me know what you think in the comments. Again, like, share, all of it. Make sure you subscribe to see all the videos that are upcoming. Please leave a comment. Let me know, number one, if there's anything in particular you want to see. Is there any question or money myth that you want to make sure that we dive into and get into the real talk on? Let me know what your thoughts are, your takeaway, your feedback, anything that you really found valuable in this. I always love to hear the impact we can have. If you have a mean comment, just go find something else better to do with your time. Until then, we'll see you guys next time. Keep it real. At Infinity Investment Strategies, we teach investors and business owners how to become the bank. In using the infinite banking strategy, you can lower your taxes, increase the control you have over your own money, lower your risk against multiple wealth eroding factors by adding additional layers of asset protection, and increase your leverage with guaranteed growth and the opportunity for dual rates of return. With authorized infinite banking practitioners with experience in business and investments, we are here to help enhance your portfolio.